of Fredericksburg. We are situated on the ancestral homeland of the Rappahannock and Potomac tribes, where enslaved people were forced to work on the land. We acknowledge that this land holds many histories, great stories, and the blood of a people. Good morning. My name is Roddy Bell Shelton Biggs. I serve this congregation as your intone minister, and I use they, them pronouns. This morning, I will also be your worship associate. If you are joining us as a guest or first-time visitor, we are glad you are here. You are invited to leave your contact information at the table in the foyer. We look forward to getting to know you. Everyone is invited to fill out a card about a personal, significant joy or concern you would like shared in the service. You may pick up and leave your card at the Joys and Concerns table in the foyer. Our pastoral care team will receive the cards and share them later in the service. Here at the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Fredericksburg, we strive to nurture learning, inspire spiritual insights, create compassionate relationships, and lovingly transform our community and the world. Please join us after the service for coffee and conversation. I invite us all to greet one another. People online, if you have muted your audio or video, please unmute now so that we can all greet one another face to face.
Good morning.
It is so good to have you with us today. This morning, I have the honor and the privilege of introducing our guest minister, the Reverend John Coffey, who is also a dear friend of mine. John serves as the Senior Director of Enrollment Services, of Enrollment and Financial Aid Services at Meadville Lombard Theological School, my current seminary, and Reverend Doug's alma mater, as well as John's. He is the affiliated community minister at Tennessee Valley Unitarian Universalist Church in Knoxville, my home church, and serves on their spiritual care team. He lives and works remotely in Knoxville with his husband Keith and their two cats, Memphis and Ganymede. He serves on the board of the Narrow Edge Oath Literacy Society in Granger County, Tennessee, and in his spare time, he enjoys both going outdoors and video gaming, in equal measure, of course.
Thank you for that warm welcome, Roddy, and thank you all for the warm welcome I've received this morning. As mentioned, I am Reverend John Coffey. I use he, him pronouns. And before we get started, I just want to acknowledge and recognize that I understand that in your congregation, ministers don't normally robe on a regular Sunday. But as we are here this morning in one kind of dress, the reality is that in my home state and Roddy's home state of Tennessee, 300 miles away, beginning next Saturday, people can be charged with misdemeanors and felonies for wearing another kind of dress. We are all born without clothing, so there is a very real sense in which all clothing is a social construct and all clothing is a kind of drag. Some of it even has racing stripes. So we wear our robes this morning not as a symbol of authority, but as a symbol of solidarity and recognizing and acknowledging the absurdity of dehumanizing laws like those being passed in dozens of states around our country right now. These opening words this morning come from lifting our voices. Thank you. Come from lifting our voices. Readings in the Living Tradition. Spirit of life and love, we live in a fragmented world that tempts us to despair. We would put it back together piece by piece if it were ours to choose. But sometimes the fragments are enough. In a world of cruelty, there is still power in every act of kindness. In a time of doubt, there is still power in every act of hope. In an age of division, there is still power in every act of unity. May we remember that sometimes the fragments of meaning are just the right size to hold in our hands. Let us worship together.
Please join me in lighting our chalice, the words which will appear on the screen, which I cannot read from here, so I'm going to grab. Will you please join me in reading the words of our chalice lighting? We light our chalice flame for those who lived their lives in the closet of shame. For those for cause where nobody knew their name. For those journalists and the fierce trans women who fought for the place takes gone too many, too young, too soon. We light our chalice flame for these and all our siblings of the rainbow, surviving, living a life out open with pride.
I'm going to tell him the number and
Okay, here we go. Okay. Our opening hymn this morning is Lean on Me, number 1021, and we hear the hymn. Please stand as you are run at the table.
I'd like to invite all of the children and those young at heart to join me up here on the carpet this morning. Hello. So this morning we have a special time for all ages, and we're going to hear a book read by Jazz Jennings, who is a dear friend of mine and is a phenomenal human being. So I'm going to let Jazz share her story with you. Jazz?
Hello, this is Jazz Jennings, and I am going to do a reading of my book, I Am Jazz. I am Jazz. For as long as I can remember, my favorite color has been pink. My second favorite color is silver, and my third favorite color is green. Here are some of my other favorite things: dancing, singing, backflips, drawing, soccer, swimming, makeup, and pretending I'm a pop star. Most of all, I love mermaids. Sometimes I even wear a mermaid tail in the pool. My best friends are Samantha and Casey. We always have fun together. We like high heels and princess gowns, or cartwheels and trampolines. But I'm not exactly like Samantha and Casey. I have a girl brain, but a boy body. This is called transgender. I was born this way. When I was very little, and my mom would say, "You're such a good boy," I would say, "No, Mama, good girl." At first, my family was confused. They'd always thought of me as a boy. As I got a little older, I hardly ever played with trucks or tools or superheroes, only princesses and mermaid costumes. My brothers told me this was girl stuff. I kept right on playing. My sister says I was always talking to her about my girl thoughts and my girl dreams and how one day I would be a beautiful lady. She would giggle and say, "You're a funny kid." Sometimes my parents let me wear my sister's dresses around the house. But whenever we went out, I had to put on my boy clothes again. This made me mad. Still, I never gave up trying to convince them. Pretending I was a boy felt like telling a lie. Then, one amazing day, everything changed. Mom and Dad took me to meet a new doctor who asked me lots and lots of questions. Afterward, the doctor spoke to my parents and I heard the word transgender for the very first time. That night at bedtime, my parents both hugged me and said, "We understand now. Be who you are. We love you no matter what." This made me smile and smile and smile. Mom and Dad told me I could start wearing girl clothes to school and growing my hair long. They even let me change my name to Jazz. Being Jazz felt much more like being me. Mom said that being Jazz would make me different from the other kids at school, but that being different is okay. What's important, she said, is that I'm happy with who I am. Being Jazz caused some other people to be confused too, like the teachers at school. At the beginning of the year, they wanted me to use the boys' bathroom and play on the boys' team in gym class, but that didn't feel normal to me at all. I was so happy when the teachers changed their minds. I can't imagine not playing on the same team as Casey and Samantha. Even today, there are kids who tease me, or call me by a boy name, or ignore me altogether. This makes me feel crummy. Then, I remember that the kids who get to know me usually want to be my friend. They say I'm one of the nicest girls at school. I don't mind being different. Different is special. I think what matters most is what a person is like inside. And inside, I am happy. I am having fun. I am proud. I am Jazz. To all of the kids out there who are hearing this book for the first time, I just want to say that you can be like Jazz. You could be your true self. I know that it's hard living in this world and that sometimes people just don't understand. But if you just stay strong and keep moving forward and just stay true to who you are no matter what, then one day things will get better and you will be able to live your life as your true and authentic self. So always love yourself and always spread that love to the world around you because you are beautiful no matter what.
Thanks, Jazz. So now we're going to sing our children out to their RE classes, where they will continue having conversations as they learn to love themselves and others. So please join me in singing our children out to their RE classes. The words will appear on your screen. You've got the light of love within you. Go on your way in peace. So let your light shine, the world awaits you. Go on your way in peace. You've got the light of love within you. Go on your way in peace. So let your light shine, the world awaits you. Go on your way in peace.
Before I begin this morning's prayer or meditation, I just want to share a little bit about this reading. I wrote this before the pandemic started and felt like it was very poignant at the time. And then last year, after I contracted COVID, I was diagnosed with pulmonary embolisms in both lungs that literally took my breath away. And as I think about the ways that our liturgy and our rituals are truly embodied, this meditation and prayer this morning that I'm going to share with you has taken on a whole new meaning for me. And it's very special for me, and I hope it will be very special for you. So I want to invite you to find your heartbeat. Maybe you can find it in your wrist. Maybe you can find it in your neck. If neither one of those places work, maybe if you sit very, very still, you can just feel it. But I invite you to find your heartbeat. Take a few seconds of silence just to become aware of it. Don't try to change it or slow it down. It's fine just like it is. As you find your heartbeat, note the rhythm, the pace, the beat, keeping time with your life. At this time in the world when so much seems uncertain, your heart sang its true cadence when you rose out of bed this morning, and it will hum its downbeat this evening when you lay down to rest. Throughout the stresses and excitements of the day and the rest and calm of night, this is the meter of your heart and soul. The rhythm you feel now has been with you your whole life. It has been with you through great joy and through great sorrow. It has been the baseline of laughter and kept tempo with anger. This beating, bouncing life through your veins has kept time since the days of your childhood. This drumming and strumming of life keeps time now. And it will keep time with you all the days of your life. In those moments when you need it most, this cadence will be there. If you find the world denying your humanity, this rhythm affirms it. When you find yourself overwhelmed by the rise and fall of life, take a moment to find the rise and fall of your heartbeat. Take note of this rhythm of life that beats just for you. We'll take a few moments of silence. Returning from our silence, perhaps this reflection can be summarized in the words of the poet Jan Richardson, who writes, "Perhaps for now, it can be enough to simply marvel at the mystery of how a heart can keep on beating, as if it were made for precisely this, as if it knows the only cure for love is more of it." May it be so.
Our reading this morning comes from a mother of a trans daughter, and it's titled Letter to My Transgender Daughter. I made soup tonight with cabbage, chard, and thyme picked outside our back door. For this moment, the room is warm and light, and I presume you're safe somewhere. I know the night lives inside you. I know grave, sad arrows were made, dividing you and hiding you from your inside. I know a little girl like you was knifed last week, another set a flame. I lack the words, or all the words I say are wrong. And I know I call and you won't answer, but I still call. I want to tell you, you will love with all I had, recklessly and with abandon, loved the way the cabbage in my garden nearly inverts itself, sprawled out to catch the last ray of sun, and how the feelings furling only make the heart more dense and green. Tonight it seems like something one could bear. Guess what? Dad and I finally figured out Pandora. After all those years of silence, our old music fills the air. And it is here for an instant, if only an instant. Perhaps these bars, what I recall equals all I feel, and I remember all the words.
I want to share with you a couple stories this morning. The first one comes from when I was doing my unit of hospital chaplaincy as part of my theological degree. It's a unit called Clinical Pastoral Education, or CPE. And at least in our program at Meadville, students who go through the program have to do at least one unit in a hospital or other clinical setting. And typically what they do is they go for 12 weeks in a summer. It's an intensive full-time position in a hospital or other clinical setting, and you're basically there to be the chaplain and to learn how to be a chaplain. You're supervised, and you have to write these things called verbatims, where you recount these encounters with patients and that kind of thing. And I want to share with you a story from one of my last weeks in the hospital. I had been there for 12 weeks, and I was feeling like, this is it. This is my final week. I've got to really make it count. So every patient that I go visit, I'm going to just do a really, really good job. And I'm going to make sure that on Monday that I am back in their room by the end of the week so that I can follow up with them. Because it's really important, because I won't be here next week. I have to really make sure that I come back and see these patients, making sure that I'm tending to their spiritual needs or their personal needs or whatever they might need. And so I got a call to go into this man's room, and his wife had called. And this is a hospital in East Tennessee, so it's very Christian-centric and very Protestant Christian-based. And the man's case was terminal. He had cancer, and he was going to die within the next couple of weeks. And his wife felt like it was very important for him to pray with a minister every day until he passed away. So I showed up at the room, knocked on the door, and the wife came to the door, and I'll say Mrs. Smith, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Mrs. Smith came to the door, and she said, "Oh, I'm so glad you're here, preacher. Come on in." And she pulls me into the room, and it's clear from the man's expression that he's not excited to have visitors. He's in a lot of pain, and he doesn't really want to see me right now. And his wife is so excited. She goes, honey, the minister is here. The minister is here. And the man turns to me, and he goes, And I'm wearing a collar that day, which is not something that's done in a lot of evangelical circles. And he goes, Minister of what? And I said, well, I'm in the Unitarian Universalist faith, and I'm with the chaplain's office, but we're multi-denominational, multi-faith, so, if there's anything you need, let me know. He's like, yeah, you can do something for me. I said, what? He said, come back when you got more faith. And I swear to God, there are moments where the Holy Spirit just gives you exactly the right thing to say, even if you could not have planned it. And so I was thinking about coming back. I needed to be back by the end of the week. I needed to make sure I wrapped up my visit so that my notes looked good. And without missing a beat, I said, okay, great. How about tomorrow? And he cackled at that. He thought that was so funny. Come back when you got more faith. Okay, how about tomorrow? In Unitarian Universalism, there is this stubborn notion that refuses to go away. A notion that Unitarian Universalists don't really have any core beliefs, because in Unitarian Universalism, you can believe whatever you want to believe. And I've heard this sentiment not only from grumpy guys who had thoughts about Unitarian Universalism, who had way more important things to think about in their personal lives than whether or not a minister got back around to see them. But I've heard this from our own congregations. I've heard this from our own people, that Unitarian Universalism is great. You can believe whatever you want to believe. This, in my opinion, is a drag, and not the good kind. It is a weight, it is an anchor, it is a notion that digs its heels into the soil and holds our faith in place, both on an individual level and in a communal level. In this case, it is a literal drag. We often forget the full text of our fourth principle. The fourth principle of Unitarian Universalism affirms the free and responsible search for truth and meaning. And so often we get caught up on the free part that we forget about the responsibility we have in that. A responsibility not just to ourselves for understanding what we believe and why, but also to those who are here in our communities with us, both in our congregations and in the larger world. We have a responsibility to go deeper in our own understanding of what we believe, both as individuals and congregations. Before I get too much more into that, though, I want to tell you another story. This is a story involving my dad, and I want to preface this by saying my dad and I are good. We have a great relationship now. But in 2006, I was a freshman in college, and Tennessee was getting ready to pass its constitutional ban on same-sex marriage. And it was a vote. It was put to a popular vote of the people. And I was just out to my friends, just out to myself, really. And I thought, this is a great opportunity to test the waters. So I went home, voted in my precinct, and sat around the dinner table with my family that night. And, between bites of salad or whatever it was we were eating that night, I, pushed stuff around on my plate, and I said, so, how did you guys vote? And we talked about the candidates. We talked about some other things that were on the bill. They conveniently avoided the constitutional amendment. I said, oh, that's fascinating. How did y'all vote on the amendment? And my dad's face got very serious. And he kind of tensed up. And there was an awkward silence about like this. And he said, I could never vote for something like that because it's disgusting and I can't support it. And this conversation is over. And he got up from the table and left. Fast forward 5 years, I met my now husband, Keith. We got married. I came out to my family, and it was very uneventful. They were incredibly supportive. They love me. They love Keith. We're invited anytime there's a family get-together. And so this has always puzzled me, that conversation with my father. But that conversation impacted my relationship with him for the better part of 10 years. Finally, just a couple years ago, I got the courage up to broach the subject again. And I said, Dad, you've always been supportive of me and my life and Keith and our family. I have to ask you, all those years ago, why did you vote for the amendment? And he looked at me confused. And then he got this shock of horror and discomfort on his face, and he said, I voted against the amendment. It was disgusting and horrible, and I could never support something like that. A misunderstanding informed my relationship with my father for the better part of a decade. And I tell that story because it's a story about assumptions. It's a story about the things we take for granted. And I just have to say here again, my father and I are good now. I don't take that relationship for granted, so please don't worry about me. The things we assume are understood are often not, because they seem like such common sense that they don't need to be said out loud. It's a story about a family sitting together at a table and everybody having their own assumptions about the other people at the table, or at least thinking that they know what the other people at the table believe. And so I want to bring us back to Unitarian Universalism and who's at our table. Who are the people who are sitting at our table right now, and what are they asking, and what are we not saying? What are the responsibilities that we have to them, to each other, to ourselves? What are the things that we need to articulate, not just with our words, but with our actions? You can answer those questions about any number of social justice issues: racial justice, climate justice, queer justice, reproductive justice. The list goes on. You can ask all of these questions, and indeed we should. But given the theme of today's service, it's worth talking about our queer siblings. And I say our in the larger sense. I myself am queer. There are dozens of states passing dozens and dozens of anti-trans, anti-drag, anti-queer laws. And it is not an exaggeration to say that politicians and leaders in this country are using the language of genocide when it comes to the queer community. They are literally calling for the extermination. They are using that word of queer people in this country, trans people in particular. And when I think about this, and I think about how it sits with my soul, and how it resonates with my Unitarian Universalist faith, I think back to our fourth principle, and I can firmly say, no, you cannot believe whatever you want to in Unitarian Universalism. If that belief denies the fundamental humanity of another human being, you cannot believe that. That is not what we are about as Unitarian Universalists. I'm reminded of the words of a colleague I heard this week. You don't have to get me on board with your humanity. I'm already there. Reverend Joanna Crawford of Live Oak UU in Texas recorded a TikTok message this week which opens with the statement, Unitarian Universalism is pro-trans full stop. We affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of all people. And the way that you affirm the worth and dignity of an individual is first and foremost to acknowledge and honor who they say they are. Trans people are divine. And to all of our trans congregants and colleagues and friends, even the ones we haven't met yet, we honor you, we love you, and we Unitarian Universalists will defend your worth and dignity. End of video. That's a faith in real drag. That's the kind of drag that puts on a bold and powerful face and says, here we are. This is who we are. We have the faith now. We don't have to come back tomorrow. But that's only if we're willing to say what needs to be said now and do what needs to be done now. And for people in our communities, I have to just say for a moment, it can feel terrifying. As a queer person in Tennessee, we are just one brief judgment away in the judicial system from having our marriage annulled. It could happen like that. And that is not an exaggeration. That is not alarmist. That is the reality that we are living in. And that can feel frightening and terrible. And I just want to name that for all of our queer siblings. And I want to lift up the words of Jules Gill Peterson, a U.S. historian who has been studying trans history, who says, we have been here before. In an interview with NPR, she says, yeah, I think the return of these kinds of anti-drag bills in their updated form, These are not new. They have been in our country since our founding. The returning of these kinds of bills in their updated form is really painful for a lot of LGBTQ people. There are plenty of people alive today who remember what it was like to live under these laws. And so, in that sense, it's really discouraging. But at the same time, that means that there is a lot of expertise. There is a lot of know-how in the community about how to deal with these kinds of laws, and also about how to successfully oppose them. They have been repealed before, and to me, that reminds us that no matter what kinds of legislation are being passed today, how cruel or devastating the impact is, these aren't foregone conclusions. And so even if there isn't an inevitable progress for LGBT people in this country, by the same token, we're not necessarily locked into the terrain that these new laws prescribe. They can always be opposed, and they can always be overturned. I want to editorialize here and highlight that that is a very nuanced kind of hope. It's a different hope than being Pollyanna about everything will always get better, everything will get better if we just hold out. It's a hope that says this is a reality that can be. The world can change, but it will only change if we fight for it. Like our reading from earlier, we don't want to be in dying congregations years from now wondering where everyone is and why they don't answer when we call. The world is calling us now. It is calling us to show up, to speak up, to act out. And I can just say, as I was walking through your sanctuary or your lobby this morning, seeing all of the ways that this congregation is showing up is encouraging. It is wonderful. You are doing amazing work. You must keep doing it. It is calling us to fight for people's rights to express and be who they are. It is calling us to fight to keep books on school shelves that tell little queer kids that they are loved and they are not alone. It is calling for us to write, call, email our elected officials and call out their hypocrisy to show them that they are not the arbiters of religion and morality. It is calling for us to show up on the public stage and affirm that trans rights are human rights. It is calling for us to create sanctuaries of protection, safe spaces where people can take refuge and be free to be who they are, virtual and physical spaces. Our Unitarian Universalist theology doesn't have to come back when it's got more faith. It's got it now. It is a faith that is here and it is queer. It is a faith in drag that calls us to imagine our boldest and best selves and live into that reality. That calls us, and I'm going to borrow a phrase from my Baptist upbringing, it calls us to put on the full armor of God, or in this case, God's best feather boa. Yes, our faith is a drag, and in this moment, may we rise and be worthy of that faith. Thank you.
So we will now show our congregational reflection. As always, speak what's coming up for you in this moment. Be authentic, be brave, and be true.
So I'll share a personal story that kind of relates to Reverend's over there. My son was outed by his sister a little over, 18 months ago. And the sad part is that the car rides to and from school every morning when they were in elementary school, my son, who was always into government and world politics and everything, would always ask me, well, who am I going to vote for? Why are you going to vote that way? And I always tried to use elementary friendly language because they were in elementary school at the time. And he said, well, why would you vote that way? In particular, it was generally the red candidates. I said, well, they don't support people who love who they love for who they are, and that's important to me. He got the message, along with his sisters, every day on the car ride, that they are loved no matter what. And he was still afraid to come out to me, and he was outed by his sister. I was at the gym, I came home, I hugged him, I said, give me a minute, let me go talk to your sister for a second, make sure she's safe, we're going for a car ride. So my story to you all, please remember, you never know who in your life might need to hear that message and when, and make sure they hear it frequently, because it cannot be said too many times.
I just want to say thank you. It means a lot as a trans person to me that because a lot of times the T is forgotten, and so it means a lot when someone else from our queer family, especially a gay man, is that correct?
Yep.
Okay, speaks up and is like, hey, like we're here, like and like. We gotta stand up for this stuff because you're absolutely right. A lot of times in like this hope, people are very full of hope, okay, and it's very easy to go like, oh, if we just positive mentality like our way through, like it will eventually get better. We want to believe that all things progress forward, towards the positive, but it really, really does take our communities, coming together as a whole to impact meaningful change. And I'm very proud of this community here because, like, ever since I've walked through the door, I have felt nothing but welcomed and affirmed in this congregation. I am very proud to be signing the membership book next week. I'm very glad. I'm very glad that we have this pocket here in Fredericksburg. Like, it's a more progressive area, but like just having this strong congregation here as like a place where I can bring friends and like I can come here and like help like let children like feel welcome and loved and affirmed is just so important, and I just thank y'all.
We need a Nerf microphone that we can throw around. I have known many of my friends here in the fellowship that would cite the Pledge of Allegiance and leave out one line. I do that. I generally leave out under God, and it's not because I necessarily disbelieve in God, but I'm sort of an agnostic in that respect. But one of the advantages of being in the choir, or today being a song leader, is that I get to look at the words before I have to sing them, and by implication, believe them. This morning we sang our opening hymn, which has a line in it that I disagree with. I think that the arranger of the song misinterpreted something he heard, and it could be that I misinterpreted it, but I like my version better than his. Okay, and that is, please swallow your pride if I have, and what is it that
Something
the
you need
hymn
to
writer said? If I have, the book says, things you need to borrow. My interpretation of the song from Bill Withers is, if I have faith, you need to borrow. And sometimes we need to borrow the faith of those around us.
wasn't sure what I wanted to say, but thank you. I really was touched by the opening reading. I appreciate being able to come to a place where, in my seeking for truth, I love the fourth principle. That was one reason I felt welcome here, no matter what, because that's my journey. But it's not a place where I'm going to be told that I must sacrifice my transgender daughter in order to please God. I just can't believe that's true. So I just want to thank you and the congregation.
Absolutely.
Thanks very much. I appreciate the talk. It was a very good talk, and it got me to thinking a little bit about what you might call the conservative religious community and what they often think and assume about what we've been talking about today. And what strikes me is that in this, I don't want to be too monolithic about it, but in this large conservative religious community, this is kind of like at least my observation is kind of like an odd dichotomy. There are the people that I think they're kind of like swamped by mass media and everything about the dangers of LGBT, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And they find it as kind of a danger and whatever. And on the other hand, there are the fewer people that we know personally, like within our own family, and even very conservative politicians who have had personal experiences
Yeah.
in having children or having loved ones that are gay, transsexual, and the like. And then, politically, like this guy named Rob Portman, he was conservative senator from Ohio, even Dick Cheney and his daughter. And once these people have personal experiences, their thinking changes, and it no longer becomes some abstract opposition to something that they don't really understand, but all of a sudden they say, no, this is personal, and I think differently because of it. And a lot of their very conservative colleagues and whatever give them a pass on that. They just don't want it to get too far out of hand.
Thank you all so much for being so open and vulnerable and authentic. Give yourselves another round of applause, as this congregation is a congregation in drag. During our offertory, you will be invited to come forward to place a pebble into the bowl of water for any joys or concerns that you are holding in your heart. In a moment, I'm going to invite Reverend John to come up to talk about our special collection. So if we could spotlight the pulpit and get the video ready for just a minute from now. Before then, if you are joining us online, you are encouraged to donate via text message or by using our website and going to the giving page. The text donation number is 844-963-2784. And after Reverend John introduces our special collection and gives you a little more instruction, greeters will be coming with a basket for in-person donations.
I have to take off the hat of sermonizing and theologizing and put on my fundraising Meadville Lombard hat now. It's a different kind of drag. I am the Director of Enrollment Management and Financial Aid at Meadville Lombard Theological School. It's one of our 2 theological seminaries in Unitarian Universalism. And what I can share with you is that because we are so small, because we are a very tiny faith, we do not have the resources of giant denominations that fund our ministry, our professional ministry. We don't have the resources of denominations that can endow a full scholarship for our theological students. We have some full scholarships, but we can't fund them all. And so that's where offerings like this come in. And I want to thank you all for donating your offering this morning to Meadville Lombard Theological School. I understand it's a split the plate, a share the plate kind of situation, where anything that comes in that's not marked as a pledge, and stop me if I'm wrong, but anything that comes in that is not marked as a pledge is split 50-50 between the congregation and the Share the Plate organization for that Sunday. Okay, that's how it works at some congregations. I don't want to speak for a congregation that is not my own. So if you are writing a check and you want to give to Meadville Lombard, you can write Meadville Lombard on the to line, and you can write scholarships on the memo line. And I can guarantee you that all of the money that we receive today from this offering will go to direct seminarian support. Every year, in combination of endowment and direct donations, we give out over $500,000 in direct scholarship support to seminarians. And I myself was the recipient of a scholarship. Reverend Doug was the recipient of the scholarship. I call him Doug because he's a good friend of mine. And Roddy is a recipient of a current scholarship at Meadville Lombard. So there's a chance that your money will go directly to helping repay that same energy forward to the future of Unitarian Universalist ministry. Please give generously. Thank you so much.
Blessed are the poor, ones who have been humbled. They will find abundance waiting at the door. Now they have a place with nothing wanting, finally belonging, radiant with grace. Let us be assured, love has gone before. Blessed are the poor, blessed are the queer, the one way or another. Everybody wonders, am I welcome here? Love has saved a seat before the table, waiting for the grateful, laden with a feast. Cast away your fear, hear if you can hear. Blessed are the queer, blessed are we all, no matter love or gender, joyfully together, answering the call. All that we become, we offer to our neighbors. Once we all were strangers, now we have a home, where our hearts are whole, where we are consoled. Blessed are we all.
and freely given. Help us grow in generosity and care of the web of life of which we are all a part. Good morning once again. My name is still Roddy Bell Shelton Biggs. I still use they, them pronouns. And this morning, I am your pastoral care team member. As a caring community, we share personal joys and concerns, matters of the heart that we want to let this gathered community know of. This morning, I received none. So I have a joy. I have a joy for this congregation, for Unitarian Universalism, for congregations that are boldly showing up and doing the work of justice with no questions asked. So take a moment. I know there are so many pebbles in our bowl of water, so many joys, perhaps sorrows, perhaps ones that signify both. So take a moment and go to that place deep within yourself and give yourself grace and love. Ask for whatever it is that you need.
I am part of the Pledge Drive Committee. My name is Colleen Watts. I am here to let you know that we currently have $153,588 in our pledge so far for this drive. We still have a ways to go. We need everyone's support to help bring forward the missions that are so important to all of us here in Fredericksburg and throughout our UU community. Anything you can give will go forward and help multiply the love that we all share for one another. Thank you.
Our closing hymn, our closing hymn this morning is number 170 in the prayer hymnal. We invite you to stand if you are able and going and join us in singing. This is a long song. It's got 6 verses. The words are up here, all 6 verses.
Please remain standing and join me in the words of our chalice extinguishing, which will appear on your screen. We extinguish this chalice, but not the light of love and service. May it be a catalyst for spiritual growth and social justice as we carry it outside these walls until we live in, until we are together again.
And as our benediction, I share with you the closing words that we say every single Sunday in our home congregation of Tennessee Valley Unitarian Universalist Church. Prophetic Church, the world awaits your liberating ministry. Go forward in the power of love. Proclaim the truth that makes us free.